Hey, Daniela. Hi, Brian.
Hello, sir. How's it going?
It's going great. How are y'all doing?
Doing well. Real quick before we get people in, did you see my note on the most recent discussion push? Because I replied to yours.
I don't think I saw it yet.
No worries. Just the gist of it was I saw you marked down. I misread the statement, so I just wanted to know if you wanted me to give you what I was missing for a regrade or how you wanted me to proceed.
You can submit for a regrade. Just alert me through email.
I will.
So I'll
I'll
make
be
sure
out
you're
of.
there.
Yeah, I'll be out of town for the next couple days, but I'll have it in before Sunday.
All right,
And I'll let
sounds
you know.
good. Sounds
Thank you,
good.
sir.
You're sure welcome. All right, let's see. Hey, Randall.
Checking in. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Tremendous.
And Randall was having trouble for some reason. I just got back from town and I've been gone all day and I haven't had a chance to get into my laptop and upload what you sent. I have it. We can always share screen if you want to go over it.
All it really was a flow for a discussion after we open this up, and it's a two-page PDF that you can just put in your post to your class afterwards.
Okay.
So I'll just read. I'll just set them each up, and everybody will be fine. Um,
Okay. So what we'll do is wait for a few more people to join. We have one more minute, I think.
how many do you have in this
There's about
session?
14, 15 people.
Good. Hello, all.
And you all saw on your study materials there, uh, Randall Miles' bio. So make sure that
And remind me, we have a full hour, right?
yes, we sure
Okay.
do. We sure do.
And you actually treat transhumanism as a a worldview now for discussion? Is that
Yes,
where you're at in this? Okay.
yes. And they've looked at some of that material previously, but I wanted to bring it up because we have the opportunity for you to join us and discuss it. But they have that material and they have the essay. They have access to the essay that you wrote and sent some time back
Yeah.
as
Okay.
well. And I attempted to take your essay and put it through an AI system to look at graphs that would illustrate what you had to say. And I don't know how successful it was, but I went ahead and posted that too. So students continue to join. Okay, it is now 5:01 my time, Mountain Time, 6:01 Central Time, and 7:01 Eastern Time. And our students come from all over. And This is Regent University, as you know. And I had the privilege of being the dean there for many years. And then my associate dean hired me back to be an adjunct professor after I officially retired. And so I'm professor emeritus, but from the King's University in Texas. But it's wonderful to be back at Regent University that I prize as the best university in America. It's absolutely a fabulous university, and these students are wonderful students. And Randall, they've been really doing well this semester. Very smart students. And folks, I'm very pleased to introduce you to Randall Miles, who lives about an hour's drive away from me here in Colorado. He lives up toward Monument, and I live in Castle Rock. So Randall is closer to Colorado Springs. So I don't want to take up more time from Randall. Randall, let me turn this over to you. And by the way, if with your permission, Randall, I'll record this for students who
Sure.
can't make it. And sometimes people, I think it's automatically recording. Students, does it look like, did it announce to you all that it was recording? Okay,
Yeah, it
good.
did.
Okay, good. So I hope you don't mind, Randall. So I'll continue to admit students. Welcome, everybody. Before we begin, though, let me go ahead and open up in prayer. Let's all pray right now. Father, we worship you and thank you for this time we have together. We worship you for Regent University, thanking you for that. We thank you for Randall and the contribution he's made for many years toward the kingdom of God and for all these wonderful students and for the families represented here today. We just give you glory and honor today. And Lord, we pray that you will help us sharpen our Christian worldview as we encounter the challenges of new technologies. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, since this is a worldview class, and since I saw the word story in your the description of your class, I figured I'd start off with my story because I'm kind of a poster child for a few different worldviews and how they impact your life. I just turned 60 3 weeks ago, so been through a few different phases. Thanks, few different phases of my journey. But I was raised by a phenomenal Christian mom, a Bible believing home. It was the Jesus movement of the 70s in California, and guitars on the beach and the whole works. And when I was about 12 years old, I started asking a lot of questions, and the church didn't have answers for me. It was, just have to have faith. So as soon as I didn't have to get in the car anymore and go to church or Bible camp, I didn't, and went off to. I started calling myself an agnostic by the end of high school. I really loved technology and science, and they had the Apple II computer lab in school. That's what we got was. That was the first introduction to technology. And so I went off to Georgetown, Oxford, and Berkeley for my education, where I studied business philosophy and law. By the time I came out of UC Berkeley as a lawyer, I called myself a practicing atheist. I wasn't just hardened. I actually trained myself in debate against the Christian worldview. This was the 90s where the new atheist movement was starting. So I joined with the new atheists, and my whole goal was to beat up on unequipped Christians. And I was a materialist, naturalist, hedonist. I chased money. I was a successful lawyer in California during the very beginning of what we call Silicon Valley in Northern California, and Silicon Beach down in Irvine, Newport. And I was happy. I was chasing the American dream, and I wasn't cheating or harming anybody. I live by a social contract view of the world that kind of a do unto others, so that they do, they honor your contracts back, and everything was great. And I'll save a lot of the details, but what woke me up to a worldview journey again, and I marched to being a practicing atheist. I did that for 20 years. And what woke me up was my mom was in a battle for her life with breast cancer. And I love my mom, and I do anything for her. But she'd try and slip a Bible verse in my birthday card once a year, and it's like, Mom, I just don't need your Bible verse. And but I engaged her cancer, and it was actually one oncology appointment. She was at the end of her cycles of treatment, and she invited me to come because she just was weak and she needed another set of ears to collect info. And I was in this situation where I was watching the doctor and her have a conversation about the ongoing treatment alternatives that were left, and the quality of her remaining life. And she had been through 5 rounds of chemo, two rounds of radiation, and they were talking about, hey, do you want to enjoy more or less your last 6 months, or do you want to keep trying these treatments? So I had this experience where I kind of pulled out and just watched from the outside, and I was just torn. It was like onions just started peeling away. That my materialism, my naturalism, my all that stuff wasn't that meant nothing. People really do suffer. There is pain. People really do die. Is there meaning? Is there purpose? And I started bawling. I hadn't cried, I don't know, I haven't cried in decades, right? And that launched me on a worldview journey. Is like, okay, I have to answer these questions of meaning and purpose and suffering and life after death. And so I truly went on a worldview journey, but I wanted to do it on my own terms. So the reason I tell you this is because it's going to lead into this AI thing. I was representing a lot of technology companies in the late 90s that were just starting to digitize content and put it on the World Wide Web. This was a brand new thing. And they had the early search engines were called Alta Vista and Yahoo, LexisNexis. And I would represent these clients knowing they had these beta versions of these search engines. And then at night, I could go use those search engines to go on a worldview journey. So I'm reading philosophers, I'm reading ancient civilization stuff, archaeology. I read the Bible cover to cover as a skeptic online before people would ever think of doing that. And it was all because I was representing these clients and they were making these chat, these little, dialogue boxes available to me in a beta version. So I did that for 2 years and it was great because nobody could hold me accountable and I wasn't going to stroll through the front door of a church and ask a pastor a question, that's for sure. So I got to do it on my own terms. And by God's grace, I got knocked off my high horse, came to the Lord. My mom was still alive and we got to do a lot of presentations together before she died. So she got to see her prayers answered, which is beautiful. I was totally a worldview and apologetics guy. And my whole approach was, this is 2002 at this point, there's going to be a lot of me's that are going to be going to the internet to ask their questions. And if truth's not at the top, then people aren't going to have a chance, And so this was search engine optimization. We started building websites to position articles specifically to position at the top of the search engines to meet people where they're at by what they type into a search engine. Because as you guys know, people will tell a search engine a lot of things that they won't even tell their best friend. I hate my life. Where are you, God? Why me, God? I mean, the types of and we position for all those phrases. So that's what I've been doing for 25 years. Is undergirding a bunch of online ministry. It's a mission field, and we have 55 websites across 216 languages. And this is kind of my back alley strategic behind the scenes thing that I do that I'm passionate about that the Lord has me doing. Got Questions is our primary front door. You may or may not have come across in research over the years. So why do I give you all of that as a setup? Because I can tell you that this AI thing is totally different. AI is not another tool or iteration of technology. It is when you're using ChatGPT or something like that. I get that. It's just a tool. But what's coming irreversibly now, in my opinion, is a total civilizational change. I think it's going to be the greatest societal change in the history of humanity, all undergirded by AI. And when I mean AI, I just don't mean ChatGPT in its current form. I mean, it's going to undergird everything that the transhumanists have been waiting for. They've been waiting for this ability to pull off the dream. And so AI is the thing that'll allow quantum, that'll allow nanotech, that'll allow robotics, that will allow the genomics stuff with our DNA. It's the longevity movement in medicine, the warfare elements, the let's just say what it is. It's the surveillance kind of state. Any of these types of things are going to be undergirded by AI. So when I mean AI, I mean the whole system and what is going to be a generative AI, a self-improving AI, and then ultimately a super intelligence. And I've talked to many experts because this is what I'm in. And the experts are scared. The experts don't know how it works anymore. The experts realize that as it gets more and more powerful, and it's growing exponentially. It doubles in cognitive power every 5 or so months. And it will have control, meaning it will be able to create, it will be able to predict, it will be able to and we won't really be able to even understand some of the formulas and things that it comes up with or where it's going. So from a transhumanist standpoint, I think it's a game changer. And I'm not saying I'm a doomer. I guess I kind of have gone through a grief cycle, to be honest with you. I think that's what I've done over the last 18 months or so is kind of that that denial and then that grief and then the anger or what have you. Because we've all been opted into this system, whether we like it or not. That's what makes me angry, is that it's going to change everything, and we're opted into it whether we like it or not. And again, I'm totally supportive of the tool. I think people should learn how to use it and be more effective in business. And I think we can cure some diseases. And I get all of that. But what's coming and what the experts say is coming is a society changer. And let's just look at work. If this thing is truly going to replace 30 to 50% of the jobs in the next 5+ years, what does that do for humanity? I mean, their answer is always, well, you have to be adaptable, you have to be flexible, you have to, be willing to retrain yourself. And it doesn't work for a lot of people. That's not how a lot of people's brains work. And to just say, be flexible and adaptable is kind of goofy. Then the answer is, well, then everybody, is going to have this universal basic income. So everybody is going to be great, right? We're all going to have our box of goodies and free rent, and there's going to be this universal abundance. And I just, truly, how does that work? Nobody really says how that's going to work. I mean, at a minimum, it's welfare. That's never worked ever historically. And at a maximum, it's this notion that we'll all be millionaires or, universally abundant. That sounds like it works for maybe 5 to 10% of the population, but not the rest of us. So I've been asking a lot of these questions, doing a lot of interviews with a lot of these top experts, and they really don't know where it goes. And they also don't think the way we do, because they limit the discussion to us being kind of human animals and human resources. And so when I talk about work, and where do a lot of people get their meaning and purpose? It's in their work, right? Where do they get where their relationships, their responsibility, their purpose for their families? It's in their work. It's where you exercise your vocation. So I don't mean just work as far as dollars. And it's the same thing with when we analyze everything from truth to identity to again, meaning and purpose, relationships. I mean, this whole notion of artificial relationships, artificial companionship is not good for humanity. I mean, that's just not how we're wired as human beings. We're wired to risk love. We're wired to risk betrayal and, ultimately covenant relationship. And if we can replace that with an artificial companion that just always loves us and affirms us, and we don't have to risk, loss, that we're going to be destroyed as human beings. So my argument is AI is ultimately anti-human. And when I mean that, I mean in its later generations. It strips us of everything from critical thinking to wisdom, right? To discernment. None of those things are important anymore. It's just get the answer and move on, right? So, people that do say I'm a doomer, I'm saying even if it's just at a minimum, gonna accelerate what we've just seen for the last 15 years with social media and things like that, and subjective search. Just at a minimum, it's gonna be bad. We haven't done very well with that either, right? When it comes to tribalism and division, and of course depression and anxiety and loneliness, and let alone the manipulation of truth. We've seen this whole crazy thing with identity. And so I think this is a perfect discussion to have in a worldviews class, especially at a high level, because number one, questions like, what does it mean to be human? And if the ones who are writing the underlying, algorithms for the AIs, if their worldview we're just a higher evolved animal that's just set apart because of our intelligence. No regard for soul or spirit, but just we're the intelligent beings. So therefore, of course, we're going to create machines to make humans more intelligent. And then ultimately, we're going to merge with the machines because that's the way that we're going to, increase our species is by greater intelligence. Well, that's not my worldview. My worldview is we're not just a higher evolved animal. We are with intelligence. We are soulish beings. We're created in the image of God. And so when all the big tech AIs don't have this as an answer, when truth is ultimately what this kind of collective hive mind, super intelligence says it is. That's not my definition of truth often. Identity, that's not how I get my identity. Meaning and purpose. We talked about work. We talked all those things. So I do think this is one of the biggest things to discuss as human beings right now is where this is going. And what does it mean for families and what does it mean for human, individuals? What's it mean for the church? And I think also it's a great discussion to have because of this transhumanism that you guys are looking at, that this is the fulfillment of the transhumanist dream. And they really talk this way. They really talk about merging with the machine. They really talk about being as gods. They really do want to live forever, whether that's through longevity practices and extending our ages by hundreds of years, or uploading, the brain into the next iteration of who we are, right? Some kind of whether it's a computer or a robot or what have you. They really talk this way. They've been talking this way for quite some time. So the reason they're giddy is this has been their dream for decades, and they finally are realizing the technology that can bring it into being. And you've heard them. I mean, this is crazy. This is like the craziest infrastructure project in the history of humanity. I mean, we're talking trillions of dollars. They're going to double the power requirements of the United States of America in the next 5 years. And these are liberal oligarchs that are saying this. These aren't, it's crazy to me. Going back to the inauguration, going back to Trump's inauguration, it was a lost on any of us that on that stage with Trump were all of the oligarchs, all the progressive oligarchs, right, who were kissing the ring. Why? Because they want to accelerate this. They want the power. They want the arms race. They want government support. So they were kissing the ring. And then you have somebody like Gates who's all over climate change, and he changed his mind. Remember, he came out 2 months ago and said, I was wrong. Well, why is he saying that? Because they need the power. They need the power. They're turning on these data centers all over the country. They need power. And, they flipped the switch on 3 Mile Island. 3 Mile Island was a 15-year regulatory nightmare to ever turn that thing back on again. And for those of you who missed that thing melted down in the 80s, right? And so 15 years probably never get turned back on again. No, they're doing it because we need the power, right? We're going to sell it all to, in this case, Microsoft. And it's both sides. Trump is like, let's go. We got to win. We got to beat China, rock and roll. It's all this, it's this rush to win. There's no regulation, no moral guardrails, no discussions of safety because we have to win. And if we get behind 3 months, we lose to the Chinese. Well, of course, that's the national interest. If you look at the corporate interest or the technocrat interest, they want to realize their dream, right? They want to colonize space, or they want to live forever, or they want to, solve. And again, there's some wonderful things that they say. There are utopian ideas of let's solve poverty. Let's solve any kind of climate issues. We can cure all diseases, right? So, it sounds to me like they're creating something that is a replacement for God in the end, right? the lame will walk and the blind will see. We'll live forever. It's a new kind of salvation. We'll merge with the machines. We will become as gods. And so again, at a minimum, I think it's a incredible, remarkable tool that is changing everything as you know it with how you study and how you work. But going forward, I think it is something to reckon with. I think we're going to have to make some tough choices as human beings. I think that it is really that significant. And I think all the experts feel that it's just a matter of time. It's not a matter of will they pull this off. And they might have power limitations or GPU limitations. The chips. They might need to build their data centers in outer space and all these things those are saying. But that's just a matter of time. It's not a matter of whether they're going to pull this off. So that's why I'm here today, is to kind of give you that, lay that out there, and also have a discussion about it and what it means to you guys and what it means to your generation, what are you thinking about as far as job and vocation? What are you thinking about as far as, access to real truth through technological sources? I mean, do we bail out and become Amish? I mean, no, I think we've got to use tech, but we've got to be very discerning. We've got to be very disciplined. And if we've got families, I think we really, really owe it to them. We have to be ruthless about protecting kids from screens. I don't think it does anything positive for kids. It's actually created to be addictive. It's created to monetize our time. There's nothing good about it. I mean, sure, watching some piece of media that's good. I of course I get that. I get that technology and media, and there's good uses of it. I'm not silly, but at the same time, I don't see many good uses for it until you're 14, 15. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I wouldn't put my little kids on a iPad now, from what I know. And so anyway, I would just throw that out to you guys. What I had sent over just today, though, I didn't give Mitch very long to deal with this, but it was just, I just put together a flow of 12 topics, and you guys can get that. He'll post it, and you guys can have it just as a leave behind. But I'll just give you what they were. There's the truth and authority crisis, the challenge to human identity, the loss of human agency, which, by the way, I think is huge. When these things go agentic, meaning they do stuff, meaning AIs, robots, whatever, we lose our agency. We're free will beings created in the image of God. Losing our agency is, I think, a big deal. Marginalizing traditional family, artificial companionship instead of real relationship, the erosion of critical thinking and spiritual discernment, the rise of surveillance and authoritarianism, and I'll go back through these, economic displacement and lost dignity of work, the spiritual apathy that we tend towards comfort and convenience. We're going to enhance our humans without regard for soul or spirit. And ultimately, this is a replacement for God. And if you don't think so, I mean, people are already using just ChatGPT for therapy, for religious and philosophical advice, for medical advice. It's a replacement for going to church. The kind of the personal digital assistant, that's great, thanks. The notion of a personal digital assistant that, think about it, it knows me, it understands me, it affirms me, in a sense, it loves me. It answers my prayers if you really want to, and it tells me what I want to hear. And so ultimately, I do think that, that an AI could be a replacement for God. And when you look at AIs in the collective power, what it is omnipresent, right? It is, in a sense, and obviously I'm not saying it is God, but it becomes a form of omniscient, omnipresent force in our lives. as
It could
far as
become an idol.
what's that?
It sounds like it's a golden calf.
Amen. At a minimum, it's going to be an idol for many of us. And at a maximum, people that don't even think that way, it's just going to be a natural replacement for any notion of God. And so I think all these things are important to discuss. When I bring it up with people, their attitude is, well, God's got this, or some sort of, I'm out of here anyway, kind of speaking to end times or the rapture or something, or um, um, I'm discerning, I have discernment. That's great. And I use AI and I have discernment, but that doesn't work for my kids. It doesn't work for, you know, I think that educational and spiritual formation should be in the home. It shouldn't be in the church. It shouldn't be on our screens. So how do you get discernment? Formation. So if you're outsourcing formation to screens at an early age, you don't get discernment. You don't strive towards wisdom. Does anybody care about wisdom anymore? No, everybody just wants the answer, right? So let's go back to the beginning of this little spreadsheet here. And I'll just read this number one to you guys. Deep fake media, large scale misinformation, algorithmic echo chambers, they blur reality and undermine trust. Beyond truth itself, there's a question of who is trustworthy when institutions, media, and even personal perception can be manipulated. We've been seeing this for the last 10 years, right, with manipulation and suppression of information, but it's accelerated. So how do we address this truth and authority crisis in our homes, churches, and communities? And I'd say educational institutions for you guys. With all the noise and deception, how do we know truth? So I would just toss that out to you guys in this, and even more globally. Am I being kind of alarmist? Am I being doomer? Is this a wake up call? Are you guys very aware of this? But then as we go, how do we know? How do we even seek truth anymore? And how much are we willing to acknowledge the truth crisis that's before us? So anybody have any comments on what I just presented? Tie it to what you've been studying in transhumanism, but I would love for you guys to interact on this number one point on truth and authority crisis.
I guess can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Thank
So
you,
I
Melanie.
yes, I have a question. Not necessarily to your first point, but just a general question. I guess, and that question is, so what is the balance? What is the balance? You said, and I think we all could attest to the fact that we use AI for various reasons. But I think some of us are, including yourself, are believe we're sold out for God. We're seeking God.
Amen.
We want to live for God. We want it His way. So what is the balance so that we don't lose the discernment, so that we don't lose the truth?
Right.
Realistic. I'm talking realistically every day, not just pie in the sky theoretical stuff, but literal every day. How do you balance the two practically for someone?
Right. I think balance is a great word. And I think that, as you're going forward in education and into your workplace, you have to use AI, right? You have to understand its efficiencies. You have to understand how to prompt things. Your employer is going to require you, right? I mean, that's what, at least for the next few years. So it's no different than any other tool. If you're in accounting, you've been using an accounting program, or, right? Or if you're any other kind of efficiency tool, if you're making a presentation for your boss, you're going to use PowerPoint. Well, now you're going to use some AI presentation tools or what have you, right? So I'm all for that. I get that. But I think it gets back to, how do we balance in other things? How well are we doing? I think what this is going to do, it's so fast paced and it's so immersive. It's everything, right? That it's like, how have we done with other things that challenged us with technology, right? I mean, when I look at social media, when I look at Netflix, when I look at video games, when I look at the competition, pornography, when I look at any of these things that have competed for our minds, right? As technology is accelerated, it's grabbing more and more of us. And so, yes, some of us, we're done with work. We close up our laptop, we go home and we seek nature. We work in the backyard. We take a run. We read a great book, and we end with prayer and the Bible, right? But a lot of us know we stay captive. We continue to scroll. We continue to escape. We continue to binge watch. We've been facing this balance issue for a while, right? And my whole argument is it's going to accelerate and it's going to capture. AI is going to, there's many who don't have, your love for the Lord and your discernment, that are going to just get captured by this. And so number one, I think it's time that we can't let the kids make this balancing act choice. I just think that kids should not be on this stuff because it is cognitive warfare. It's terrible for our brains. It is filled with deception. At a minimum, it just rewires your brain. We're designed for solitude. We're designed for slowing down. We're designed for some, getting nature and peace in the backyard. And this does not do that for our brains. And you've heard about the dopamine hits and the loops and the things we get into.
Let me ask
So
you
long
this,
answer is
Randall.
I
I think we have another
yeah,
question from Brian.
yeah, go for it, Brian.
Oh, no, one thing that I've done a lot of reading when I've looked at AI, and I'm just old enough to remember internet still needing a dial-up tone. So I'm still in that world of, I won't say I quite grew up from cradle with the internet, but I can remember it becoming a big thing, and I can still remember my parents getting, a home computer. And I look back on other big technological turns. I've read a little bit about, and I'm no expert, but I've read little bits about how the Industrial Revolution was going to drive cottagecore industry to the death of cottagecore industry, which it was in a way,
Yep.
but it also meant that we'd have no connection anymore. And we adapted to that. I think of people who were pretty upset with the lightning rod being invented, saying it was a disruption of God's retribution. And while I am not saying that your opening statement was anything like this, I am curious how you see a pattern of people in history being very concerned about something, and then watching humanity mold really well around it. Um,
Right.
I'm even familiar with the Pope banned one of the popes during the middle of the Middle Ages, right before the turn of the High Middle Ages, banning crossbows because they were too efficient killing people. So I say all that to set up the question of, do you see that AI is unique in its way it's going to present a challenge, or do you think it falls in line with a lot of other big technological revolutions? I'm curious because I
Right.
feel like your opening
No.
statement went both ways. So I'd love to hear
Yeah.
that more specifically.
No, I think you put that really well. I mean, I think again, the printing press, it revolutionized, Christianity, right? Because now we could print Bibles and what have you. So, and then of course, you go into the Industrial Revolution and electricity, and I mean, just look at things like films and radio and TV. It can be used. We all, oh my gosh, it's gonna be the end for the Christian worldview, and then we adapt and we learn how to use it. And then of course smartphones and internet and all those things. I understand that a lot of people would say that AI is the next iteration of a tool that we will adapt to. But as I've really dug into it, and I think that's what we're dealing with right now. If you just look at ChatGPT and how that changes your work and changes study and things like that. Um, the deeper I've gone into it, the more I think this is a game changer. I do not think it is in line with all of the other additive technologies, that we've adapted to. When you look at the agricultural era going into the Industrial Revolution, that was 50 years. This is already on us. We don't have time to adapt. And we are, so yes, I think that your point's well taken. And I think that's the way a lot of us are dealing with it right now. But I think that this is going to cause a much greater societal change. I'm not saying we're going dystopian, but I do think that it's going to, many people, many families, many communities aren't going to be able to adapt quick enough. And if I just look at the job loss thing, how are we going to deal with that? You know,
Well, I think you bring up something that's, I want to remind everyone that Kurzweil, I know you know this fabulous, brilliant mind who predicted this, the singularity. And that's what you're addressing is how the whole world is going to change and is changing so dramatically, so quickly that Christians are barely beginning to come to terms with this. And the Christian community, the scholars from a Christian worldview, John Lennox, for example, and Noreen Hertzfeld and others. So just the whole image of God, will this challenge our understanding of the image of God in even the Christian community as people begin to isolate with AI and have relationships with virtual entities that are so human-like that their emotional needs are being met through a virtual entity. I think you're
right.
addressing those things.
You're 100% right. Go read a Ray Kurzweil book from 20 years ago, and you'd be shocked.
Yeah.
Brianna, I saw your hand go up.
Hello, did I do this right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, nice to meet you, sir, through the computer. Um, so I have more of like I guess like not necessarily like a biblical or like a Christian viewpoint on it. I'm bringing up more of like this is just like an alternate idea about it, I guess.
Please.
So on more of like an emotional aspect, for example, I'll give you some background. I lost my grandmother to dementia a couple months ago. So when we talk about this, my mind can't help but go to we have all in order to create AI, people have to be smart enough to, doing these like technological advancements and stuff. I guess I would consider people like me who feel like, why are we so focused on one thing when we still haven't found cures for certain diseases that have been around forever? And it makes me wonder, like, not just how families will suffer, like financially and stuff like that, but will there be an aspect of the community or society, excuse me, society that feels, I guess, not slight-handed, but maybe angry that there isn't more focus. Like you spoke about your mother, that's something I think breast cancer is that also runs in my family. That's something like, why is there not more focus there? I would feel. I'm not saying that AI is not important, technology is not important. Of course it is. That's how we're talking right now. But it just makes me feel like that there could be other focuses right now.
Well, a lot of the leaders in AI are the primary focus for, in a sense, selling this is we're going to cure breast cancer and we're going to cure dementia because we're going to turn the AI on in such a way that it actually surpasses our knowledge, our understanding. It can iterate something 24/7 across, 100 million agents, and we
Mhm.
can test all sorts of new treatments and drugs and all sorts of things in a virtual AI world. So one of the most positive things right now, when you look at, AI is the medical applications, is the curing of disease. That's one of the primary selling points is that will accelerate
Mhm.
kind of humanity beating that stuff. So
I
when
guess
you
I
look
just
at
don't
anything
have that
like
much faith in humanity.
right. Well, that'll
We'll
that'll be
see.
the point where people will agree with you and say, let's give it over to an unbiased AI. Our court system, our politics. Why do we need these leaders that are faulty, that are biased? Let's just turn it over to a quote unbiased AI who just leads as a beneficent dictator and resource management administrator. You can see it, right? I mean, think I'm a lawyer, right? So I can see that you would have AIs where you just drop in all the evidence, the AI would run it all, and against all the laws and all the statutes, and kick out an answer. And you don't have biased judges and you don't have, juries that are all over the place. You just give it to this unbiased super intelligence. Um, and it'll happen.
That's scary.
So what's
Yeah, that
that?
reminds me of iRobot.
Sure it
Well,
does.
I
I see
watched too many movies.
Kristen has a question.
Please.
Kristen, are you there? She
You're
had,
muted.
Sorry.
There you go.
Hi. Um, I work in rural healthcare administration and advocacy, and just kind of on the topic of healthcare, um, I think that absolutely it needs to be at the forefront of all of this kind of technological research. And in some sense, in a lot of ways it is. But a huge problem in that, on the one hand, is that um, as ChatGPT starts to replace primary care for so many people, there's the medical information that chatbots have is horrifying and so inaccurate and leading a lot of patients to make some really bad decisions. And it's also trying to replace the relationship that a patient has with their provider, which is not a good thing at all. But also, ultimately behind these chatbots, there are people who are feeding information. And so I think that if it isn't already happening, which I believe it is, there is a potential for political agendas to hide behind these chatbots, which we've already seen. That's very clear. If you try asking ChatGPT about science, it won't give you a non-evolutionary point of view. It just will not, no matter what you ask it, like that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, even if we are advancing medical research through AI and trying to expand, if we are trying to cure cancer or whatever we're trying to do through AI, you know, there are so many populations in the US that still don't have basic care. We have 200 less hospitals than we did 20 years ago. And yet we are trying to advance all of this science forward with AI that might be accessible to 10 hospitals across the country if you have really good insurance, but we still can't cover basic needs in rural areas, in underserved populations, for people who can't afford marketplace insurance, for all of these different patient populations that just. And so I guess I'm curious about how, if something like this does happen, especially in the medical space, and solutions do kind of come to the forefront where, hey, there's this new AI management of diabetes or something like that. How long would that even take to reach? I mean, that's not going to be accessible to most people. But are we going to stop and say, okay, pause the research, let's make sure this is accessible? Because historically, that's not really how it works. So I guess that's just kind of the challenge that my workforce is dealing with right now. Dr. Oz and RFK Jr. just this week came out with the announcement that they're going to fix rural healthcare with AI nurses, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. And I think that it's taken over so much of the healthcare narrative that we're obviously concerned. So I'd just be interested on your thoughts on all of
Right.
that.
Well, I think everything you're saying is real. Let's first of all, the AI leadership would say ultimately the AIs will get better. They will answer medical advice, give medical advice better. There will be no more hallucinations, so to speak. It will be better than a limited doctor who is limited in the journals, that they read and their continuing education and their breadth of practice. And so their answer would be the AI, you know, clinician, not necessarily the brain surgeon yet, but the clinician is going to be more uh, available across a broader spectrum of population. It'll be great advice because of this superabundance concept where the AI can make all of these things and make all these treatments and ultimately 3D print all of this stuff or what have you. There'll be better care for everybody. And that is one of the big selling features, and you ultimately will feel compassion from your AI, nurse, And that is what they're going for. I know you don't like to hear it, but that's what they think will be, that's a utopian kind of a dream that they're looking to deliver. It's already happening. I think healthcare will be one of the last ones to get taken out because of the personal touch and the bedside manner and all of those things. However, look at people, the coders themselves right now are all getting put out of work because the AI does it better. It codes better. So you are already seeing all these AI companies that are firing, 10% of their workforce because AI is doing it better. And that's going to continue. It's going to happen in entry-level lawyers. They're not getting hired as much. Entry-level accountants. So, it's going to hit, I think it'll hit healthcare a little later because of things that you've mentioned. But I think healthcare's going to get replaced in a lot of ways. That's the dream. So these are things we're talking about, which is how do you replace that? How do you replace, face-to-face communication, the human touch, the understanding the heart of everything you mentioned, the passion of the vocation. Well, you're going to replace that with a robot? Well, maybe. So these are the discussions we're having. And will it be available for everybody? Will all of these, resource, these new cures and everything? That's always an issue, isn't it? That's always an issue in all, will this only be available for the top 10%? What about the rest of us? The transhumanist dream, well, they're all going to be rich, but I can't get a job because I'm a nurse and there's no jobs left for nurses. And I'm 50 years old. And what am I going to go retrain myself as a what? So these are the big questions to have, and maybe some of it for the believer is you double down, on kind of living counterculturally, living for community, being face to face, staying a nurse in your community no matter what, because that offers a lot more than just, AI medicine, but it offers, true human, service and heart and all those things that come with it. And we just we just do it anyway, right? We raise our kids the way they should be raised. We put, digital fasts on our screens. We read books again. We write letters again. We do face-to-face community again. We get off these stupid things where, yeah, it's causing loneliness because it's a virtual relationship. Let's go back and be face-to-face again. So maybe that's the best. Maybe protest isn't our best answer, but rediscovering presence, with our families, our churches, our communities, nursing, and we just do it anyway. We buck the trend. We go minimalist. We reject certain answers in tech, even if they quote are better, right? We know they're not better because they don't address the human soul. So, anybody
Good.
else?
Okay. Yes.
Danielle, I think I saw somebody.
Hi.
Daniela.
Yeah, so I worked for a local broadcast station for a small amount of time, and AI was really going into the workforce there, and like we had to use it and we had to create like AI goals, and like we've had to convert scripts into like digital stories. I was wondering, do you think that AI is going to like eradicate the journalism profession, or is it just going to be like something that works side by side with journalists?
I think when it comes to journalism, when it comes to media of all types, any creative types, everybody says, oh, the AI can't replace creativity. And I would say, are you sure about that? With what's coming. So what do I think? I'm in media and it's huge in media, graphic design, filmmaking, animation. Yes, AI is start music, it is replacing. And everybody can say, oh, it's not as good. It's not. You should have seen it a year ago versus today and what it's going to be in a year, right? It is dramatically changing these areas like journalism. What do I think? I think it's going to take out a lot of jobs. I think you're still going to have the overseers. You're going to still have the people that run the creative and top level strategy and things like that. But you're not going to need a lot of the extra people, we're already facing that. That's 100% we're facing that. I don't need 3 graphic designers. I need 1, because that 1 can use AI to be more productive. That's just straight up it. And everybody can say, no, I'm an artist. I'm an artisan. I'm really creative. And it's like, yeah, but that only lasts so long. I'm sorry, that does. Business will tend towards the more effective and efficient, cost effective solution. So I'm not, I'm not saying it's a good answer, but I think it's reality. And I think that we need to be, I don't think we withdraw or get angry, or I think we have to come up with a kind of a positive approach, hopeful approach to how we're going to do. At least we can do this in our community. Yeah, okay, I'll be an artisan, creative person in my community and teach them the old ways. And people will come to my music festival and will come see, read my local journalism. Yeah, and I'm printing it rather than digital. And we're going to go back to some of the old ways of pamphlets and newspapers and, letters. And I know it sounds goofy, but reading the classics rather than reading kind of a slop, right?
Here's Brian with a question
Yeah.
or a comment.
And I know we're running a touch low on time, so I'll be quick. You'd mentioned this before, and kind of hearing you talk again sparked it. You'd mentioned in your opening statement about how AI could. We talked a lot about AI replacing jobs and AI replacing some connection. You'd mentioned before that there's, especially when we talk transhumanism, there's an idea that AI can replace God in a sense. It can replace not God capital G, God lowercase g. And then you also kind of talk about some legal implications you see as well. So my background's in law as well. So hello, hi, in the law world.
Hi.
So my question, and this is a little bit of an oddball question, but I'd love to hear someone who has such an expertise on this. Do you think that AI and transhumanism will be able to eventually seek religious exemption in a lot of things? Because that's one thing that I've seen is them being able to dodge a lot of. One way that I see they could dodge a lot of regulation. To bring up an easy example, you see things like the Church of Satan is able to claim religious exemption. We had that whole debate a couple years ago. I believe it was in Georgia
Yep.
with putting up a statue of Baphomet, and they're saying, "Hey, it's religious. Can't back off."
Sure.
Even memes that have become like the Church of Flying Spaghetti Monster has got actual religious recognition in some states from a legal perspective. So I'm
Yep.
curious if you think transhumanism will latch on enough to be able to start saying, "Well, hey, you can't regulate AI. It's a god. It's my religion."
Well, we're already dealing with it, right? I mean, even Trump did an executive order that said states cannot regulate AI. We cannot states cannot, it's a federal issue. There is no regulation because it's an arms race. We're in an arms race. So we can't slow down. There is no regulation. So number one answer is when you've got the biggest money ever in the history, 10 oligarchs with, with multi-billions of dollars, they're more powerful than the leaders of the European Union. They're running the show. There is no regulation. The lobby is so powerful. But to get back to your question, I don't. The big argument's going to be for personhood for AIs. That's going to be the big one. If they truly are creating patents, who files the patent? The human that prompted it, or who owns, so when AI is embodied in robots of various kinds, do they have rights? Are they persons? Can they defend themselves? Can we, just, take them out? Or is it, what's the property rights? Who owns them? If an AI, and we can define what consciousness, a lot of people would say, oh, an AI can never go conscious. Well, what does that really mean? If they're billion times smarter than I am and reason and think and are creative, I don't know the difference. Even though they're not created in the image of God. They're not soulish beings. In a sense, they're Nephilim, right? They're hybrids. They're they're other thans. They might be another species. If you have a super intelligence embodied in a robot, is that a species? I mean, if it can make all rational, it does not have to deal with a human whatsoever. Right? So what legal rights does that disembodied AI have? These are really great legal questions for you, Brian. I think you should maybe, this is going to be a huge area of civil rights, legislation, regulation, everything. So, beyond the religious exemption or the Church of Transhumanism, I think they have too much power. I think it's such a powerful move, and being run by governments like US and China with the money of the oligarchs. I don't think that they're worried about, you know, being regulated as a church or not a church.
Well, let's
So that I
we're
know we
gonna
got to leave in 2 minutes, but that leave behind, you guys can walk through it. I think it just bring up a bunch of good questions for you guys. They're very simple paragraphs that, but we touched on quite a few of them here. So you guys can deal with that as you go forward in your transhumanism. I do not intend to be a doomer. I intend to be a realist here. I'm very hopeful. I'm very positive. I have the joy of the Lord. I know where I'm ultimately, totally victorious, and I'm very grounded in my worldview. I just care that, I think that 70% of the population will just go along with this because it's easy. It's powerful. It's comfortable. And that gives me pause. And I think that we
well,
should have a different answer for the 30%. So
well, I think that you bring up the wonderful question about worldview and the need for guardrails. I think we should pray that our government, I mean, this is a cliche that necessity is the mother of invention, and the necessity to compete with our adversaries means that we don't have a choice. We have to master AI, and we have to be ahead of it. But we ought to be leading in the ethical guardrails as well. And that, I think, is your concern and mutual concern, is that we are mindful that the Ten Commandments, that there needs to be a moral basis for the guardrails. And that moral basis, in our view, of course, is Christianity, because God has given us the moral authority, the moral basis, the moral courage to do this. Well, we're at the end of our time. I just want to thank you so much, Randall, for coming and talking with us. And the essay you sent originally really made me think through the need to have you on our program. And by the way, the article you sent is now posted to the website, so students, you all can go read that. It's very well done. You saw it online. I mean, you just saw it now because I shared the screen, but now you have it, and I would encourage you to download that and save it. Make sure you always keep Randall's name there on it, and we don't want to take his thoughts away from him.
no,
But
I
thank
can share, a lot of this is we're all in this together. It's awareness piece. I hope this brings up good discussion for you guys, and, thoughtful reflection when you go home, and, we're going to have some big choices to make, and we're going to have to stick to our principles, so to speak, stick to our worldview when these big choices come. So
All right. Well, thanks everybody, and I'll post this to the website so you all can watch it again if you'd like, because it is being recorded. So I'll let everybody go, and thank you, Randall, again for your kind participation and leadership in this issue, on this issue.
thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you.